Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Dancing with Damage. I'm Ian, your resident philosopher.
And I'm Abby, your resident author.
And today, we talk about working out and getting paid. How fun. Hey, Abby.
Yes, and we want to recap the last episode first, or just dive into 80s music and spandex tights that are fun, bright prints.
This is not part of the social blueprint. What is part of the social blueprint is Darwin, who has been
hanging out,
held captive and hostage by Abby in her beanbag chair. I'm a little jealous that she has Darwin. He is, I think, at least in large part, Maine Coon, and he is all part
Sniggy
and cute.
Yeah, he's my best friend. We like to hang out. He just sits with me. So sometimes when we start, I sit down in the chair and he decides it's time to hang out with mom. And that's why he's occasionally here when we start talking to you. So welcome, Darwin.
He is a very indifferent animal. You can see his noble expression is just so peaceful and zen. To recap last episode for Darwin's impassive expression, we talked a bit about changing the welfare state. And I'm sure in different nations around the world, more or less developed than Canada, welfare systems have improved or are worse. But we would like to see work centers instituted in developed countries where instead of receiving a paycheck, money could be acquired by going every day at a certain time, doing certain work, or if that couldn't be done, a social worker assigned to a vulnerable person to help them meet the needs of their life so that they can get to the next stage, which would be going to the work center, which would eventually lead to the next stage of regular employment through the apprenticeship program and so on.
And they wouldn't have to go every day if they could only go once a week. And if they only wanted to go once a week, they could just go once a week. And I think the power to have employment that flexible, because it's very hard to find even a part-time job nowadays. You have to give set days. So let's say you wanted to work 1 day a week, but you wanted to be able to change which day that is. The idea that you could just show up and work that day doing something suited to your skill and ability level, and you could pick any day you wanted. You could do 2 days 1 week, and you have no commitments. And if you wanted to take time off, you could. I think that is a very beautiful way to be able to exist, especially if your life is complicated and you don't have the ability to commit a set schedule to employment.
Could you do 2 days in 1 day?
No.
What about Tuesdays?
You can have Tuesday.
Yeah, so the beauty of the work center is its flexibility, but importantly, curtailing monetary power without an appropriate return of service. Very important for the fundamental happiness of those vulnerable people who would be using the system. Very important for all of society in general. Now, one thing we didn't really mention last episode, but Abby sort of brought it to my attention in
the interim.
In the intervening time, she said to me with a cat in her hand, she said, we didn't really mention people who are massively or seriously physically disabled or have major developmental delays, things like that.
They're inhibited in some way. Their capacity maximum is less than many others people's capacity maximum. Yeah.
The differently abled is one term. And just to be very clear, how we look at that is, and we say in the book, look, it doesn't matter if you're differently abled or fully able or just vulnerable because of damage or whatever it can be. All individuals can do valuable work. It just has to be tailored for the individual. And that would be the skill of an employee of the work center to make sure that no matter what someone's physical limitations are or mental limitations are, they would be able to get appropriate work. So I think that would probably satisfy your concern, Abby, or is there some other point there?
No, it was just to mention, because I know people would consider this, what if you are on welfare currently because you are physically or mentally unable to get a regular full-time job? And it's not damage necessarily that is driving this need. It's another outside force that is driving your inability to hold permanent employment. And I think we said that as long as you're working to your own capacity, you can be fundamentally happy. And I don't think it's fair to discount the value every person can bring to society. I think it's wrong to say that if someone is differently able, they can't, bring that incredible love and inject it into society and help reduce damage in themselves and others. Because There are jobs where maybe someone just needs to have someone hang out with them for a day. Maybe in a community of elderly people, they just want someone to sit and talk to them for a day. Maybe that would be a nice thing to do. Or maybe someone needs you to sit down and help with mail, maybe sort mail. Maybe there's jobs that involve you sitting or involve you monitoring something. Maybe they need someone to help young people by watching over them, not necessarily having to do any physical activity, but just be aware. So there are lots of things that people can do that are very attainable for every skill level. So the most important thing we can do in society to reduce damage and increase health is to make sure every person is part of that community and is part of the love injected in society. You can't ostracize anybody because once someone is ostracized, damage can really sink its teeth into you, and like mental health can really sink its teeth into you. So it's important that every person has the opportunity to show love to their own capacity because that's what we are called to do as humans. And I don't want anyone to miss out on that opportunity. That's sort of what I wanted to add, Ian.
A field can be cropped into a beautiful lawn by a herd of goats, and all the goats can clip some grass, some more than others, some less than others, but at the end, the lawn will be nice and level, and all the goats will be full. And that's what we need to do. And moving on to today's topic, which is
Exercise swimming.
did you like the goat thing?
I like the thought of cute goats frolicking in a field and helping each other mow. And it reminded me, we have some lawn we have to maintain on a regular basis. And more than once, it has been suggested to us we hire a team of goats to mow our lawn, but it has turned out to be prohibitively expensive. So we use a lawnmower. But I just like the thought of all the happy goats working together to fulfill their purpose of mowing the lawn, apparently.
Well, yeah, I mean, goats throughout history have not always been lawnmowers. I think
I don't think people used to care if their lawns were mowed.
no, that was sort of like a side effect. Probably they didn't. Hey, get out of the wheat, you goat, you might say. But nowadays, let's pretend that they're the most eco-friendly lawnmower, and they're an analogy for everyone in society, just kind of clipping away at the grass. The work that needs to be done, it's always growing, just like grass is always growing. Every day it needs to be clipped, but at the end, everyone's full and everything in society, the garden of society looks quite nice. Now, speaking of the garden of society, we talk in terms of the next step in necessary lifestyle changes. So we've looked a bit at the vulnerable sector, those who are the most vulnerable, who would depend on the welfare state. We're going to look into a different demographic now. That's the traditional working class. And it's possible you fall into the traditional working class, and that's great. And it's possible you fall into the vulnerable class. That's great. But what we all need as humans is the old Latin expression, mens sano, corporo sano, which means healthy mind in a healthy body. And so we're going to look at the healthy body part a little bit in this episode. And overwhelmingly, Abby, what would you say the scientific community says that in this generation need to be doing more of to have physical health?
They have to work out. You just have to. And the crazy thing is, they're doing so many studies on this topic because it seems universal. I've never met a human who hasn't wanted to exercise more, not necessarily to lose or to gain muscle or weight, but just to feel healthy. Because if you work out, you generally feel better, it releases endorphins in your body. You just feel good about yourself. It helps with mental clarity, it reduces the risk of diseases like stroke, heart disease. It just plethora of benefits to physical activity. And now they're saying, I read an article that even 1 minute of a high intensity workout is enough to do good if you do it a few times a week. It dramatically increases all the health benefits compared to not doing any physical activity. So everyone wants to be healthier in some capacity. They want to work out for whatever reasons they have, but it's so hard to afford equipment or a gym membership, to take time, to find the motivation to do it, and to maybe find someone if you need help with working out, Maybe you need modified workout, like if you have an injury, and maybe you have to do modified workouts that strengthen different muscles and don't aggravate the injury. Maybe you need someone who can help you and you can't afford that. So, Ian, what is our proposed solution to this?
A farmer goes into the chicken coop and collects 20 eggs. Abby's like, why? What did I do?
I thought
wrong?
you could answer the question.
Yeah, nope, not happening. A farmer goes into the coop and collects 20 eggs. And
throws 19 of them back at Ian. Anyway, sorry, you were saying.
You're actually pretty close. 10 of them he crushes under his boot, and the other 10 he uses to boils and makes some food.
Okay.
But the next day, he is careful and does not crush the 10 eggs. And those 10 eggs are instead used to make a delicious omelet or something else for the family to eat.
Maybe a quiche? That's pretty egg heavy.
Yeah, it's pretty delicious.
Yeah.
And so on both days, all the eggs were used up. But on the second day, all the eggs were used well. And so going back just 1 second to the work centers, in the Necessary Changes to Education Act 1 of the Social Blueprint, you will have noticed Abby and I proposing a lot of policies that would be in the short term cost intensive. And so just like the farmer, we in Act 2 are going to want to implement policies that protect eggs from being wasted and resources from being crushed underfoot and sort of dripping through the ground to no effect, and instead being used for a good purpose. And so the work centers, we argue, based on our human experience, would be a great way to save money. Imagine all the funds that are perhaps misdirected in the welfare system and all the lost opportunities to rehabilitate and help those in the vulnerable community so they're not perpetually falling on the safety nets of that justice, welfare, and health system. That's a lot of financial power. It's a lot of eggs that we can cook somewhere else. And in the same way, we know, and Abby and I have talked about this, in Canada and I'm sure around the world, when we look at the rising toll of sedentary existence and what that does to the human body is a lot like the human mind. It's sort of supposed to be doing what it was evolved to do. Form is sort of related to function. And so in the same way, that's how we understand why guilt can be so devastating to a human, because when the parent-child relationship is tainted with hate, it's so contrary to instinct that it causes this massive problem. The same thing with the body. If a body that is supposed to be non-sedentary causes almost, well, I don't want to say almost all, but a huge percentage of the funds that are spent in the healthcare system and the collateral effects to the workforce and the trickle-down effects of unhealthiness of the body are eggs that could be unsquashed and used productively. Hey, Abby.
Just to refocus on that for a second, we have established from our research in a previous episode that somewhere between half and 2/3 of the entire federal budget in Canada, that's the range.
I think it's got to be around there, but a massive percentage for sure.
It was approximately $4 of $6 billion, approximately, or 400 of $600 billion. But either way, half to 2/3 of the budget being spent on health. You can imagine that is a crippling percentage. And if people were healthier, even 10% healthier, we could dramatically cut down on the amount of spending we would need to do. This is just federal spending. So if humans were healthier, as Ian said, they would be able to go to work more. They would injure themselves less. They would be happier. They would be more willing to do things. They would not have to take so many days off sick. They would feel better. And when you feel better, even if it's not in a quantifiable way, you can show more love to other people. Even if, let's say you have kids and you feel really good and one day you just take them to the park and you run around for an hour. If you're very unwell because of health issues, you might not be able to do that. You might be inhibited. But if you can do that, that 1 hour of play has such a dramatic positive impact on the children. Not only are we reducing in the long term with what we're about to propose, which you'll actually see is cheaper than the cost we're currently paying for healthcare, but it has so many dramatic implications in other areas of people's lives. We're proposing solutions that, like the barn that the water was falling in and everyone was trying to protect their individual sacks of grain. And they said, hey, why don't we just patch the roof? Then everyone's grain is dry. We're not trying to treat the symptoms, we're trying to treat the cause, damage. And with these suggestions we're making, if we can fight the damage at its root, there are trickle effects everywhere. It helps every aspect of someone's life improve.
The blind shepherd abandons their flock to the wolves, but remove the blindfold and the sheep can feel safe.
When you said the blind shepherd, I thought they were physically unable to see. I didn't realize they were blindfolded.
Oh, I probably should have clarified that. Yeah, so they were only temporarily unable to see. The poor shepherd. In my mind, this shepherd had a much better situation than the one I gave him verbally.
Initially, I was picturing somebody we were trying to help in society. I felt really bad for the shepherd, and I was wondering why anyone would let them be in charge of the sheep. Because of their skills, that's probably not their strongest one. But then I started picturing a pinata situation, and I'm confused, but maybe it's going somewhere.
I just was agreeing with you. I was saying that a damaged society sort of...
Is this how people say they agree with you in public? Why? And like, it's like a blind shepherd who is no longer blind and doesn't feed their sheep to wolves. I concur. Who talks like that?
Probably not even me, because I didn't even mean to. But I agree with Abby. You know, a damaged society leaves its people to the ravages of problems.
Mm-hmm.
And so the scientific community has said diet and exercise, key factors in good health and good quality of life. And if you talk to any family doctor or anybody in the medical field, you'll hear the same thing. The secrets to good health are not complicated. And so we're going to talk about eating well in probably the next episode.
Mm-hmm.
But we also talked in the last episode about how damage, guilt, and love are sort of locked in combat in the subconscious. And it's important to arm love with tools, weapons to overcome it and get the upper hand in that duel, the upper claw, as it were. So what this episode is a bit about is exercise centers. So again, an upfront cost for the government to apportion buildings to be public exercise centers. But the idea being, and this is the fable in the story, if there are flowers in a field, a butterfly will come to get the nectar. And even if the flower is slightly odd looking or different color than the other flowers, it still has nectar and the butterfly will still go to it. And in the fable, what that means is the working class, as Abby and I are, and as many people are, we are motivated by the monetary gain of going to work.
I'd like to point out he hasn't answered any of my questions yet and explain what the exercise center is. And I'd like to just pause your metaphor for just a second so people can follow it.
Mm-hmm.
We propose, in plain English, that exercise centers are gyms, but they're free to attend. So it takes the barrier of being able to afford a trainer or access to the gym away from the general population. So that removes friction, but also within a limit to make sure people don't abuse the system, to monetarily compensate people for working out. And it's sort of like a tax refund for the amount of money they would have cost the healthcare system, in part, because I think some surgeries cost, tens of thousands of dollars. So if we can avoid some of the massive problems down the line, I don't know if we'll ever be able to pay people back for that, but it'll make society feel better. But it's sort of like every year you are paid back, or every month you're paid back, or every week you're paid back, however frequent it is, for the effort you're putting in to reduce your burden on the healthcare system.
The butterflies, though.
You're paid to work out to a point.
And so, yes, Abby says it well, but I still want to talk about butterflies.
You can, but now they know what we're talking about.
I know. That's good thing Abby's here, or this would just be, well, first it'd be weird that I was talking to the beanbag chair. But so, yes, so we know that a monetary reward motivates people. Money is power. People like power. That's a normal sort of, it actually is a healthy instinct. Fine, let's use that. So if people are willing to go to work, even though they don't always love going to their work, they'll do it in order to be able to spend the money on things they want. Well, the butterflies will flock to a flower of any color. And so if you could receive monetary compensation from the state for going to public exercise center and under some sort of monitoring system. It could be a heart rate monitor. It could be anything that someone clever could come up with. I'm not clever, but I know there's a way for clever people to monitor how many calories and how much exercise someone is doing. If someone goes and meets a quota of exercise that is assigned to them based on their age and size
and ability level.
Exactly.
Mhm.
In safe conditions, monitored by skilled sort of
Personal trainer.
kinesiologists and so forth, so no one's getting injured, then that person would receive almost a second paycheck because, as Abby says, the reactive cost of an unhealthy society where there's rising rates of cardiac disease and diabetes and obesity related problems, joint related problems, depression and mental health that's linked to sedentary behavior, the reactive cost of that is actually a lot less in our argument than the proactive cost we're suggesting with the Nectar Center. That exercise
The reactive
center.
cost is more than what we're proposing. You said it backwards.
And then I said nectar.
The nectar is juicy.
So how about that? I mean, wouldn't that be great to, because we all want to work out, but I haven't heard, and maybe it does exist somewhere, but certainly not in Canada and certainly not in the mainstream developed countries. It would be very nice to receive a sort of a second paycheck if you could prove that you were making best efforts to be non-sedentary. And to be very, very clear, some people have the opposite problem where they become obsessed with exercise, but for the wrong reasons. Maybe to
impress a potential partner or for vain reasons, which is not inherently bad unto itself unless it gets a little extreme.
We want to see a society where it's not so much about body type and body shape and everything like that. It's about how can society on average have the healthiest physical health. And we know from the scientific community that is essentially on a regular basis working up a sweat, getting your pulse above a certain amount. It's not complicated. And so that's what the exercise centers are all about. And so, Abby, if you had to describe the pillars at play here, what would you say they were?
Well, creating meaningful work. I mean, one of the main reasons people don't work out is because they say, well, if I have free time, I should be trying to make money to improve my situation or that of my loved ones.
Mhm.
So if you're paid to work out because the government's saying, thank you for improving yourself, being your best self for yourself, your loved ones, and also reducing your burden on taxpayers, that's great because then you can absolutely validate taking the time to do that. And also it reduces isolation because other people will be using these centers as well. What's another one?
Well, before we get into that, I actually want to do a little hypothetical because it occurred to me. Last episode, I think we had Timothy. This time we're going to have Tanya. Tanya's got two
We're
kids.
into the T names.
Yeah, for some reason. Your name doesn't start with, here's Abby. So
10 years? 10? 10 years? What's my name?
Tenuous. I thought you were saying tenuous.
10 years grasp of reality.
I think I have
tinnitus. Tinnitus?
Or tinnitus?
Tinnitus.
I didn't pronounce that.
You hear ringing?
I
Did Throb or whatever his name trying to do surgery on you?
Oh yeah, the caveman surgeon. Yeah, I think that is a problem for me. So Throg, it's another T name. That's the theme. Another T. No. So Tanya has two kids. They're 3 and 5 years old. And she's like, yes, I'm interested in, I've always wanted to work out regularly. Now the government is incentivizing me to do it. I got no one to watch the kids. But she goes down to the exercise center because there's one located close geographically to all the major centers. Just like if there's an election, you can always find a polling booth in your area. So too would we want to see the exercise centers available. Tanya goes down. Okay, so what do I have to do today? Well, Tanya, we want you to do something to get your pulse above 120 for 10 minutes, whatever. Pick your machine. We've got the rowing machine. We got the treadmill.
Elliptical.
We see from my notes here, you broke your toe a couple of days ago. How's that going? Oh, Tanya, that's fine. Maybe I won't do the running machine. We're going to do the elliptical. Great. Oh, and I got to drop my kids off with you. No problem. The exercise center has a daycare or like a kids corner.
Well, the thing is, childhood obesity is such a problem and it's rising dramatically. Everyone needs to exercise, and especially young kids. They're driven to run around and make noise and do active things. So it makes so much sense that all ages would be welcome there, especially young kids, because I think kinesiologists especially would be perfectly able to find activities that are suitable for a young person to inspire that love of activity and that love of, moving around and burning their energy, because it's a staple of being a child. You've never met a child that doesn't want to run around and go crazy, because that's just part of being a child.
That's right. We're going to drop off the 2 and the 4-year-old and
The 3 and the 5
the 3 and the 5-year-old. Holy, poor Tanya.
They've devolved.
Tanya's kids are going the wrong way. They're going to go into the kids' corner. They're playing dodgeball in there today. Just leave them with us. They're going to be
The
all
3-year-old is playing dodgeball.
and he is killing it. No, maybe I don't know what they're doing. They're doing something. Whatever 3-year-olds do. But they can play dodgeball. Just really need squishy projectiles.
I think 3-year-olds can do some light dance classes, maybe.
I think if you give a 3-year-old a patch of grass and like a hula hoop, they're good. So maybe feed them a clementine, get some sugar going in there, that bloodstream. They're good. Other 3-year-olds around there, great. Socialization. Tanya's happy as a clam because she gets an hour off from the kids that she wants, and she can go,
Improve herself.
Go improve herself and feel good and earn a bit of money too, which is always nice to have because, things are expensive these days. And that's great. She goes, she sees her neighbors there because they all kind of go at the same time every week. Hey neighbor, how you doing? Like, it's nice to see you. And how are you doing? We're forging some connections because normally before these exercise centers, we never saw each other, didn't know each other. And the fabric of society was weakening. That's what Tanya says. She loves to talk like this. Probably because she broke
a rap battle.
She's ready to throw down. So wouldn't that be great? Tanya goes home. Kids got a little bit of exercise. They were away from the screens. And so Tanya can do this, however many times is prescribed. I don't know. We'll leave top medical minds to sort that out. But something needs to be done because Canadians, and I'm sure people in developed countries around the world, are feeling like there's just no incentive and no encouragement to be doing the right things. There's lots of encouragement in a damaged society to do the exact wrong things. It's almost easier. It feels easier to just go with the flow. And the only thing that gets us out is into the cesspool of damage. We need to swim like the salmon up the rapids to the clear pools of health. And Tanya's going to elliptical all her way up there, and it's going to be just great. So obviously, this is a very idealistic view, and in practice, there would certainly be some rough starts to getting to here. But again, that's true of any progressive social policy. It's a bit of a, you got to walk before you can run. It's just how the world works. So don't think of this idealistic idea as too far-fetched. Remember, this is 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now, depending on how the progress of Act 1 has gone in our theory.
Maybe 50 or 100 years. We don't know.
Who knows?
And I do like, you'll notice maybe that Ian said, as an example, to meet her threshold for earning an incentive was 10 minutes of working up a sweat. This level of activity is not enough to dramatically change someone's physical essence. The goal of this is not to make someone feel like they have to look a certain way. We can't stress that enough. The goal is to be healthy and strong, because healthy and strong can look like a lot of things. And your mental health is improved with working out. Your cholesterol might be improved. You might feel better. Your organs are working better. Your heart is healthier. These are the goals we're looking at. We're looking at pure health and increasing overall health, mental health, ability to move, like joint function, flexibility, those things. So I like that this is not an idealistic, you have to look a certain way. This is very much, you just have to be your best self and show up however you can. And as science has said, the threshold for making an improvement is sweating for 10 minutes. And that doesn't sound like too much work. And it's comparatively to those people online who say you have to work out for an hour or 2 hours. The goal is just to meet the threshold of health. So if 10 minutes of working up a sweat is all it takes, then you should be rewarded for that. And that should be all that is expected. And of course, people will have the right to go beyond that should they choose, but the important thing is the monetary compensation is controlled in a way that people who might be addicted to working out for whatever reason don't abuse the system or feel like they can keep working out to gain a financial stronghold.
Build a castle from gold. No, we wouldn't want anybody to exploit the system. That wouldn't be hopefully possible.
Because then they could hurt themselves. And actually, if you work out too much and improperly, it actually has the opposite effect and it makes you less healthy. We don't want that. We want the sweet spot.
Yeah, you have some people going to the gym too much and then their kidneys are shutting down in their 30s and 40s. So there's certainly a road to follow. And again, Abby's right. When we talk about the pillars of play at this chapter, creating valuable work, people staffing the exercise centers, a lot of people I talk to are interested in physical training and that sort of thing. It is a rewarding career. It's interesting working with clients, helping them, making sure they avoid injury. That's a very rewarding life if you do that for your life. So there's nutritional advice too. These are all things that could filter into the zeitgeist of a community, if you will, at the exercise centers. What would be another pillar at play?
I said stops isolation.
Oh, reduces isolation. That's very good, right? Because you're seeing your neighbors and you're bonding. Because if you have to actually physically go to a place to work out, it's not like Zoom where you could be in Shanghai sitting at your desk. So it means that naturally, just like the gravitation of Saturn's rings, right? An exercise center would draw in people of a similar area in the community. So you get to know your neighbors. Very important.
We forgot any policy should make healthy behavior easier to achieve. It was like last time when we forgot making meaningful work at the work center. We forgot improving health at the health incentive.
Oh, I remembered it. I was just seeing if you remembered it.
It's nice to be able to check the reference book.
Yeah, you know what? That's why we wrote it down, because Abby and I are not perfect. We have a lot to learn. And we're glad that you are joining us on this journey. Because at the end of the day, all we're asking is if you think, does that make sense? Logically, would that work? And especially logically, would that work if each step has been followed up to this point? We argue that it has, and we argue that this is the pathway to finally humanity turning it around for itself after many decades of sort of floundering and making it worse off for the next generation. I think we can pick up the pace and turn it around. That's my thought. So other than that, Abby, I think that's it for the exercise centers. Any closing remarks?
I just think, again, take the argument for what it is and also understand that this would be implemented in the future. So a lot of what we've been talking about the last few episodes, anything past discussing the baby license is in the future. So the people implementing this would have a different perspective because their lives would have been impacted early on. But also you have to remember that it's the goal of what we're proposing is what you have to focus on. And if you really think about it, the idea of making being healthy a pillar of society and something that we support each other in doing as opposed to shaming or gatekeeping. I mean, we're social creatures. We're meant to be kind and bring each other up. This is what we should be doing as humans. This is how we inject love and we reduce hate.
Yes, and also at this point in the acts, we always have to remember that the School of Ruling has been active for a bit so as to time the release of its candidates for when they're needed at the act that we've described. So instead of leadership that would sort of
quibble about tax implications and how much it'll cost and how I think versus how you think versus what party you're in, hopefully the people making these policies would be willing to, consult experts and find the best people to make this happen and also be thinking about long-term policy versus short-term fanfare.
I was grasping for the word pander. So the leaders at this time in the acts wouldn't be the pandering type. They would be taking bold action and being wise and compassionate people. And that's why we think the exercise centers would be a big hit. So thanks for tuning in. And next episode, we're going to be talking about
nutrition,
a little bit about food. So for all you foodies out there, stay tuned for next episode.
Have a great day, guys.